The summer of 1972. While the world watched Vietnam burn, something impossible was happening on a remote volcanic island in the North Atlantic. One American, one Russian, a chessboard between them, and somehow, this became the most watched event on the planet.
It's been a long road for Fischer to this game, and it'll be a long match at the end of that road. Both he and Spassky have to play 24 games. The match could last up to 2 months. Each game runs to 5 hours. The most intellectually exhausting battle known to the mind of man. The World Chess Championship.
Reykjavík, Iceland. Not exactly where you'd expect to host the most important sporting event of the decade. But in 1972, this tiny island nation bet everything on bringing the World Chess Championship here, because Iceland understood something the rest of the world was about to learn. This wasn't just chess. This was a war. Since 1948, every single World Chess Champion has been Soviet. Boris Spassky was the current champion. His preparation was managed directly by the State Sports Committee. Grandmasters analyzed Fischer's 500 games. Tal, Petrosian, Kiris, and Smyslov all wrote long confidential letters, reflecting in depth on Fischer's play. And then there was Bobby Fischer. No team. No government support. Fischer prepared almost completely alone, in a room at Grossinger's Resort in upstate New York. A folder of Spassky's games. No coaches. No psychologists. Just Bobby Fischer and 64 squares. And he was destroying everyone.
Fischer the right to play the world's champion, Boris Spassky, another Russian, next spring.
But Fischer had never beaten Spassky. Not once. In fact, he had lost 3 in 5 games against Spassky. Whatever dominance he'd shown against everyone else, Boris Spassky was his blind spot. He was also, by any measure, completely impossible to deal with. It is the last week of June, 1972. In Reykjavík, Boris Spassky has already been here for days. In Douglaston, Queens, Bobby Fischer is sitting in his friend's house.
It was in this house in the Queens suburb of Douglaston that Bobby Fischer stayed holed up, off and on, for the past few days. The house belongs to a friend of his, Dr. Anthony Sadie. For much of today, Bobby Fischer stayed holed up inside, refusing to talk to anyone.
The first game is scheduled on July 2nd. Fischer was nowhere to be seen. He was hiding.
Just wondered if you've ever seen Mr. Fischer, if you have any proof that he actually exists.
That's a good question. Yes, I think, gentlemen, we can agree on the point that Mr. Fischer exists.
Iceland's prime minister contacts the American embassy, all the way to Henry Kissinger. The man who is simultaneously managing the end of the Vietnam War is now on the phone, trying to persuade a chess player out of a house in Queens. That same afternoon, a British financier named Jim Slater is listening to the radio in London. He hears that the match is on the brink of collapse. And he decides to do something about it. He calls a press conference and announces he will personally double the prize fund, bringing the total to $250,000. Bobby Fischer hears about this and cannot resist a dare. Fischer arrives at Keflavik Airport in the early hours of July 4th, just 5 hours before UE's deadline expires.
Fischer's arrival was only some 5 hours before the deadline when he would have had to forfeit his challenge for the world title. But it was, of course, 7 days after he was originally scheduled to arrive here in Reykjavik. The Icelandic Chess Federation sent their president and a welcoming committee to meet Fischer, but he was so intent on getting into his car and driving off to Reykjavík at speed that he brushed past them without even stopping to say hello.
The next morning, the Soviet delegation is furious. They issue a formal demand. Fischer must apologize personally to Spassky before a single piece is moved. In writing.
Фишер должен принести извинения там и так далее. И, в общем, вопрос о матче еще стоит.
To everyone's astonishment, Fischer complies. He sends Spassky a handwritten note. The next 2 months would be unforgettable. Before moving forward, let's talk about our sponsor. If you're serious about mastering openings, check out chessreps.com. It walks you through opening lines step by step with spaced repetition. But here's what hooked me. Once you learn the theory, you drill real game puzzles. The similar positions you'll actually face when you play this opening. Not just memorizing moves, but understanding the plans. There's also time drills that actually build instinct and leaderboards if you're competitive. Links in the description, chessreps.com. It's genuinely the best way to learn chess openings. Now back to the video. July 11th. 6 minutes past the scheduled start. Game 1 begins.
But Fischer was not here.
The clock has now been started. It was officially 5 o'clock in Reykjavík. Spassky is obviously anxious about the whereabouts of Mr. Fischer.
If Fischer doesn't show up by the time 1 hour has elapsed, he forfeits the game automatically. Oh, there he goes now. He's just played 1 pawn to queen 4.
You saw Spassky make his move, then he touched his clock, which turns his clock off, but turns his opponent's clock on. So Fischer's time is now ticking.
Spassky opens up with d4, but Fischer is late.
Well, Spassky is waiting.
Right, and waiting and wondering whether Bobby will show or not show. And there's absolutely dead silence in the hall.
Spassky is pacing, he's nervous, and...
Wait, here comes Fischer, coming on the stage saying that he was caught in traffic. And I think Spassky was visibly relieved.
And also perhaps pained.
Fischer, 9 minutes late, arrives and responds with knight to f6, a Nimzo Indian defense. For 28 moves, it looks like a draw is coming. Pieces are trading off. The position simplifies. And then Fischer does something that will be analyzed for decades. Move 29. Bishop takes h2. He grabs a pawn that is obviously a trap. Spassky pushes g3. The bishop is caught. It cannot escape. Fischer gets 2 pawns for the bishop. However, he was not lost yet. His decisive mistake occurred just before the time control. f4. He fights on until move 56, then resigns. But Fischer has an excuse. He blames the cameras. Fischer didn't show up for the second game. He says the cameras are too loud. 2-0. Fischer still has not beaten Spassky in his career, and he's now down 2 points in a 24-game match. The match seemed to be over. Fischer had already booked another return flight to New York. But 2 hours before the game was due to begin, Fischer's lawyer called the referee and asked that the game be played in a separate room. A table tennis room with no audience.
Fischer said he would boycott the match until hidden movie cameras are removed from the playing hall. The promoters said the entire financial structure of the match depends on recording and exhibiting the play.
Spassky had every right to refuse, but he agreed.
У меня, конечно, была возможность 2 раза уехать с матча, сохранить звание чемпиона мира, что очень устраивало спорткомитет. Но меня это никак не устраивало. Вот в чем проблема была.
A closed-circuit camera was placed above in a way which did not disturb Fischer. Spassky opens with d4. Fischer responds with a modern Benoni. The game builds tension through the early moves. And then, on move 11, Fischer plays knight to h5. It looks wrong. The knight leaps to the edge of the board, giving Spassky permission to shatter Fischer's kingside pawns. After Spassky captures with his bishop, Fischer's pawn structure is in ruins with doubled h-pawns. Spassky, surprised by the novelty, doesn't find the best defense. He weakens his light squares. At adjournment on move 40, Fischer seals his move in an envelope. The next day, Spassky opens the envelope. The sealed move is bishop d3 check. He resigns. Bobby Fischer has just beaten Boris Spassky for the first time in his life, and the entire match shifts on its axis. Game 6, July 23rd. This is the game chess players will talk about forever. Fischer walks to the board and plays c4, the English opening. Fischer has played this move only twice in his entire serious career. He had previously publicly condemned the Queen's Gambit as dull and ineffective. Spassky plays his Tartakower defense, a line he has never lost with. But Fischer's 14th move, bishop to b5, is an innovation, a subtle move Spassky's team hadn't studied. Spassky responds inaccurately and slowly starts losing the thread. By move 38, Fischer's position is simply winning. An outside passed pawn, connected rooks, total domination. Spassky fights until move 41, then resigns. The hall erupts. The audience rises to its feet and applauds. And then Boris Spassky stands up from his chair and joins them.
Grandmasters never applaud an opponent's victory, but I guess this is something no one has ever seen before.
Fischer has the lead for the first time. Fischer isn't just beating Spassky on the board. He's exhausting him with complaints and delay. Meanwhile, Spassky goes along with it all, even when his own team screams at him to walk out. He just wants to play chess.
Я почувствовал, что моя нервная система разрушена. И без нервов, вы знаете, это как автомобиль, когда ваша электрическая система рушится, вы ничего не можете сделать. И вот это предощущение у меня подсознательное, что что-то происходит со мной неладное, вот это у меня было. Но я должен был это отбросить, потому что у меня другого выбора не было. Я должен был идти на матч.
After the scandal in Curacao 1962, the candidates tournament was replaced by a series of matches. And by 1965, Spassky was the best player in the world, alongside world champion Petrosian. He tears through the candidates tournament against Kiris, Geller, and Tal to qualify for his first world title match against Petrosian. Spassky lost his first match with Petrosian in 1966, but won several top tournaments in that period, such as Santa Monica 1966. There, he crushed 6 years younger Fischer in what was only their second encounter. Spassky had also won a King's Gambit game in 1960. As the losing finalist, Spassky directly qualified for the 1968 candidates matches where he beat Geller, Larsen, and Korchnoi. And so, 3 years later, Spassky and Petrosian again sat at the board for the highest prize in chess. This time, Spassky won. By early August, The Soviets are in full panic mode. Spassky's second, Efim Geller, issues a public statement suggesting Fischer is using mind control. Electronic devices hidden in his chair. The Icelandic Chess Federation brings in scientists. They x-ray the chairs. They find 2 dead flies in the lighting fixture. But one x-ray does show something strange in Fischer's chair. A long tube-like object. They x-ray again. It's gone. They dismantle the chair and find some wood filler. Game 11. And Spassky, backed into a corner, plays the finest chess of the match. Spassky plays the Sicilian, and Fischer responds with the poisoned pawn variation. But Spassky's team has studied it obsessively. Their secret weapon, move 14, knight retreats, all the way back to its starting square. It looks passive, but it's a trap dressed as a concession. Move by move, Spassky tightens the net. The queen has no good square. 11 moves later, the queen is captured. From there, it's technique. The crowd erupts. For the first time, people wonder, maybe world champion has one more fight in him. Game 13, August 10th. The match is at its halfway point. Fischer leads 7-5. Momentum is creeping back to Spassky. He won Game 11, drew Game 12. Another win, or even a solid draw with White in Game 13, and this match starts to feel different. Spassky plays d4. Fischer responds with something shocking. Alekhines defense. Fischer had barely played it in his career. Spassky's team has almost no preparation for it. The game becomes a complex, grinding battle. But it's the ending that will be remembered for ages. 5 passed pawns against a rook. In the end, Fischer won. Spassky sits at the board long after Fischer has left, staring at the position, trying to figure out what just happened. The match score? Fischer 8, Spassky 5. The next 6 games are all draws. August 31st, Game 21. The hall is packed. This could be the end. Spassky plays e4. Fischer responds with the Sicilian, Paulsen variation. Spassky's team has almost no preparation. The position simplifies into a queenless middle game. Move 18. Spassky sacrifices his rook for a bishop and pawn. A last gamble. Fischer accepts. At the adjournment on move 41, Spassky takes only 6 minutes to seal his move. The next day, Fischer arrives late. In a blood-red suit, he clearly didn't have time to press. Spassky's chair is empty. 12:50 p.m. Lothar Schmid's phone rings. Boris Spassky calls the chief arbiter and resigns by telephone. Schmid walks to the front of the stage.
In the name of FIDE, the International Chess Federation, I proclaim Mr. Robert Fischer as the chess champion of the world.
Bobby Fischer is the world chess champion. America has its champion. It's a Cold War victory.
It's a pleasure and an honor to me to hand you the certificate confirming this. And in the same time, I hand you the gold medal, which in these days accompanies world titles in any field.
Thank you very much. Við sjáum þarna spauðilegt atriði. Fischer ekki alls kostar ánægð með að nafnið hans ekki gullpeningum, en Övi fullvissar hann að þetta skiptir ekki máli.